Hello, my name is Koen Verstrepen and I would like to welcome you at another episode of Value from AI. And today I have here with me Anne Schuth, who leads the news personalization team at the PES Group. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you.
So let's to start with, tell us what does your job consist of? What do you do all day?
Right. It's a mixed bag, I guess. Now that it's holidays, summer holidays, it's more developing because people are away. I don't have that many meetings. So I'm a programmer. I write code, I review code, we have refinements, and we have a team that gets to write code. So I'm doing that a lot, but in other times, I'm also spending a lot of times in meetings with my stakeholders. I'm a product owner officially, so I have all these stakeholders that want things from me. So I spend time collecting their requirements and convincing them that they need to have more personalization in their products.
Nice.
And I'm a team lead, so I have one-on-ones with my team members to see how things are going and whether things should be different.
That's quite a lot
Yeah.
of things on your mind. I really like it that while having all these responsibilities, apparently you still succeed in staying in programming code yourself. Is that because you like it or because you think it's important for your job to do?
Well, okay, so certainly I like it. Whether it's important, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that my team would be fine without me. They're pretty good developers, so they don't need me. But at the same time, I think if you stop developing for a very long time, you end up having a problem. So I think it's important to stay in touch.
Okay. And what would that problem be?
You'll not be up to date with technologies anymore. So the team comes with new solutions to problems that we face, and I'm on board with them. I know intimately how they work since I'm developing with them. If that wouldn't be the case, I'm not sure how I would look at what the team is doing.
Yeah, and if you talk about technologies, are you talking about, let's say, new algorithms that got published, or rather, let's say, the tools and the way and the libraries, etc.,
Right.
that you need for high-end software solution?
Yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about the algorithms. I mean, that's something I would naturally keep up with. But I mean, even if I wouldn't be writing code, but no, I would be concerned about architectural things, like how are all these algorithms working together? How are we implementing them? Libraries, tools, whatever. Those are the things that will get dusty pretty quickly, I think. Yeah.
So you now have this role at the PES Group, but that you did not do that your entire professional life.
No.
What was your journey up until this point?
Yeah, I will struggle with where to start. I mean, I guess, so I have a background in AI, artificial intelligence, kunstmatige intelligentie. That's a bachelor's and a master's in many universities in the Netherlands. So you can actually study that as your main topic. So I did that. And then, so I already focused there on natural language processing kind of systems. I stuck around at the university. I did a PhD in search engine technology, specifically about how to know whether users are liking the search engine that you put in front of them, so evaluation, but also how to learn from feedback. So users are clicking around or interacting with your search engine. How can you use that to improve your search engine? So that's what I did a PhD on. I spent 4 years studying that, of which I spent twice an internship at Yandex and at Microsoft Research. And then I was done, and I was pretty much educated to go to the Googles and the Bings and the Yandex and whatever search engine have you of this world, but they are not in the Netherlands, and I want to stay in the Netherlands. So I looked around for companies that had textual data. I care a lot about textual data. And that had a personalization or a recommendation or a problem like that. So one of them that stuck out was Blendel. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's okay, cool. It's a startup in the Netherlands, or used to be a startup in the Netherlands. It's still a company. I'm not sure it's a startup anymore. But it's a company that pretty much sells news from, well, it used to sell news from all publishers in the Netherlands, many in Germany, many in Belgium actually, and some in the US. And well.
I was one of their customers.
Oh, you are? Okay. You were or are?
Well, I assume I am, but it has been quite a while since I used to have.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a fun product because it has a lot of. They have a lot of content. They have about 8,000 news articles, new news articles every day. Obviously, you'll need to make a selection if you have users that want to consume that news. So that's what I worked on a personalized newsletter. And that's also where my love for journalism was born, I guess. People there really care about journalism. I mean, I always cared. I was reading news and things like that, but never in a professional way. So that always stuck around. And then, well, I made a little sidestep to Google, Google Research in London, which was great, but tough because I still lived in the Netherlands. So when I was leaving Google because of my family, I looked around and there was the Press Group, which is like Blendel, a company that sells news. So that was really easy for me. I jumped on the Press Group train, and that was about, I don't know, 1.5 years, a bit longer ago. Yeah. Okay. So here I am.
So you have actually, in your career, you have already been on different kinds of companies, like the big giants, Microsoft, Internship, Yandex. You worked at Google. Then you now work for the Press Group. It's also quite a large enterprise. And then more, let's say, the startup scene with Blendel, younger companies, newer companies. Is there a difference to see there, or are these companies on the inside more or less the same?
Not at all. I mean, no. As far as I can tell, like in my history, there's these 3 types of companies. You need the startup, a company like the Press Group, and then these huge companies. And all of them have their advantages and disadvantages. I mean, yeah. For instance, at Blendel, it's really easy to make a decision and just go for it and do it like right away. Like, okay, everyone in the room agrees, we'll do it. That's done. And that's the decision process. Then you have companies like Google, where I was in a completely different place, right? You started at the bottom, or semi-bottom. So I couldn't even see the decision process. It's like far beyond what I was able to see within the company. And then there's the Press Group, which is in between. I can see the process. I can try to influence it, but that's trying, and it's tough, and it's slow. So yeah, that's sort of the spectrum when it comes to, well, decision processes. But like in any dimension, there's these kind of differences.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So today, at the Press Group, how could we see the achievements of your team? What is the level of personalization you already achieved?
Yeah.
In which products?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah, it's very simple. It's just one product right now. It's the AD, Algemeen Dagblad app. If you have that, and if you're lucky, meaning that if you're in the 30% test group,
yes.
Then you might get up to 4 personalized push notifications per day.
Okay.
That's what it is. And those are based on the locations, the cities, pretty much, that you read about.
Okay.
So if new content gets published about the cities that you read about or that you often visit, either of those two, or a combination of those two, I should say, then we send you a push notification.
Okay.
That's the only place where currently our personalization shows.
And So the recommendation, through a push notification, is it one article at a time?
Yeah,
Then?
one article to one user.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it, because it's so location based, is it regional? Is it really news related to the location or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. It's more likely because the more often a location is mentioned, or if it's published in a regional section of the news of the website, then it's more likely to be pushed to you if you also read about that region, but not necessarily.
Okay.
It could be a front page article with lots of mentions of the city you happen to be interested in,
Okay.
and then we can push it. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a reason that is the first achievement of your team, or did it go really like by accident?
No, not at all. No. We looked at lots of opportunities. So there's two main reasons I think we started here. So the first is AD, Algemeen Dagblad, writes regional news. Algemeen Dagblad plus regional newspapers together, ADR, together writes about 1,000 articles per day. So that's a lot of content. And a big chunk of that is regional. The problem with regional articles is that you can't put them on the front page of a national newspaper. Never, because they're only interesting for a tiny group of people. So to find these articles, people have to sometimes click 4 times to see them, to even see their headline. So you have to click on regional news, and you have to click on your, like, on the big region and a sub-region, and sometimes even a further sub-region, like a city. And then you'll see the article. Not a lot of people do that. So these regional articles don't get a lot of visibility. And that's really sad, because they are unique content that only we have. People are really interested in the stuff that happens close to them, naturally. So we're trying to close that gap. So that's one reason. And then there's a technical reason. Push notifications are really easy to integrate with. It's just calling an API. I don't have to ask a website builder to, plug my widget somewhere or anything. Nothing. So
Okay.
it's just me calling an API, and the user will get a push notification.
Okay, so you have kind of, let's say, a front end that's there taking care of actually showing a notification. You just have to call the API.
Yeah. So the integration or the cooperation with other teams is minimal.
Okay,
Yeah.
I agree. That's a good case.
Yes.
An easy case. All right, and so that's where you are today.
Yeah.
Is it clear for you where you want to go?
Yeah.
What is the end destination, or at least some serious milestone in between?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so obviously we'll need to roll out what we're doing now. So to the whole AD, but also to HLN, as you said, and it's coming up. And then to our premium brands like Volkskrant, De Morgen. Okay, but that's push and that's rollout, so not that interesting, but still we'll do that, and that's great, right? We have that scale. Then up next is email personalization. We want to do 2 things. First, we want to start filling a For You section with sort of For You banners. So 3 images that are depicting articles that are for you. Again, for technical reasons. It's really easy to integrate images into an email template, personalized email. It's just links to a service that we are running that returns images. So that's the second step, and then really personalized emails, like pretty much like I did at Blendle, where the plan is to really have like a ranking of news in a newsletter with text integrated. That's much more difficult, because if you want to send out a lot of emails,
Yes.
You somehow have to have your mailer integrated with your recommender.
Yes.
And that, I mean, it's certainly possible. I've done it before, but it requires a tight integration between the 2. Okay. And that's something that we need to figure out. So that's still all sort of push-based recommendations, right? Push notifications, email, sort of us initiating the communication to the user.
Yes.
And then we're looking at pull-based recommendation, if you want to call it that. So simple lists on the website, like a For You box, That's where we'll probably start, or read more list underneath an article. Or something I really would like to work on is this is what you missed box. Like you've been away for a couple of hours, or maybe a couple of days or weeks, and then we want to show you what happened in the meantime and was important for you. That's something I would love to have on my news sites. I always am completely out of context when I've been away for a week on holiday. Like, hey, what's this? News about gele hesjes. I don't know how to translate it. I'm sorry. What is gele hesjes?
Well,
anyway.
they come from France, and there's the gilets jaunes.
There you go. Thank you very much. That's what we should call them then.
I think in the UK they don't know them yet.
Okay, exactly. Anyway, so I was like, give me that. So that's what I would love to work on. But important, I think, at some point, I think the whole experience of news products should be personalized. So if there is this article about something tiny for most people, but it happens around the corner from where you live, then it can be front page news for you, and it should be. So I think we should personalize the front page, and people always, when I say this, get extremely scared, like, oh, don't touch my front page. Like journalists, right, get scared, like, you should stay away from my front page. But then when I explain that I only want to touch it for each user, like a few times a year maybe, when there's this highly relevant news for that particular user, then I want to just hijack that front page. It should like be very prominent there. And it doesn't mean like the rest of the front page will disappear. You'll have to scroll down, and there will be. But I think that makes lots of sense to go there, but many things need to happen before we get there.
You opened a lot of doors here.
Yeah.
Let's see which one I want to kick in first.
Sure, go ahead.
Because the front page thing, I definitely want to go there. But I want to start with your story about push. First push notifications, then emails, both being some way of pushing it.
Yeah.
First question I have is, can you give people a sense of what it took to let's say, for example, the push notifications, to get that from nothing to go live, let's say? Because I think people often underestimate to really do it well, what it takes.
Yeah, me included. I mean, so I'd done it before, right? So at Blendel, I've built pretty much from scratch, not me alone, right? But in a team, I was involved in building a recommender system for newsletters, which is very similar to what we needed for push. So I had an idea of what was needed technically. So that wasn't really the problem. Well, sure, also we still had to do it, but the bigger problems lie in getting the organization behind you, at least for me, or at least at the best group for me. So when I was hired in March last year, I was not hired into a team. I didn't have a team. There was some personalization efforts. So at Medialand with Maarten de Villet and his team, but also there were a few proof of concepts running on the Volkskrant and a few more, and they were mostly initiated from marketing, a marketing department in the Netherlands. And so it seemed natural for me to join the marketing department. At least the organization thought it was natural for me to join that. I didn't think it would be, because I really think that what we're doing it touches what journalists do, selecting news for users.
Yes.
So I wanted to be very close to journalists. I wanted a journalist as a boss, not a marketing director. Mostly because I think the KPIs for journalists are different than they are from marketing people.
Okay.
And I think that matters. I think you need alignment in your reporting line.
Okay.
So it took a lot of convincing before people bought that and thought that indeed we need to do this somewhere else in your organization. And then the only natural place to do that was within IT, who, like IT was already building stuff for journalists. And then we could sort of have that reporting line. But that took months. Then I needed to hire. That also takes time. And then we started building, and I think our official kickoff was in August last year, so a year and a bit, 1st of August, a year and a bit ago. And that's when we wrote our first lines of code, started writing our first lines of code. Yeah, and then you find that you're in this big organization and you can't be like Blendel and just do everything on your own. You have to, well, follow whatever the company is doing. That also takes time.
Obviously.
Fine, but about a year later, we sent out our first wishes. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it took about a year.
And do you think now you can, for example, use the results you get from, let's say, engagement on those notifications to speed up, well, your wishes for next
Yeah.
project you want to work
Yeah,
on?
not only that, also what we build is a pretty generic recommender. So we are we have a pipeline to analyze our content. So an NLP pipeline pretty much. So content is written by journalists, and within a few seconds we have an enriched version of it. So that we'll need that for anything we do. We have something that we call a user profiler or whatever, something that builds user profiles. That's also something we'll need for anything we do, like all the applications I just mentioned, email or pull recommendation. We'll need to understand our users. So that we have. So and then we have a component that pretty much in a streaming fashion currently, so that's perfect for push-based recommendation. Binds these two things together. So they given a new article and this whole database of user profiles, find the right users to push this to.
Okay.
But those are components that can be reused for many of our applications. So yeah, I certainly think that the next product or next feature that we're building is not as much work, but we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to do it in less than a year for
Yes.
the emails. I heard you saying also that you're thinking about features where you say selected for you or where you explicitly mention the fact that it are recommendations.
Yeah.
Is it something you didn't give much thought, or do you think it's very important?
Yeah.
It's because actually, in my opinion, let's take Google as an example.
Yeah.
They are highly personalized search results.
Yeah.
It's nowhere saying like, especially search results for you. They just do it. And I think the upside of that is that they people are not judging if you have one false positive. So it's not actually a good recommendation. But the one above and the one below it is good, then people will just click on the one above or below.
Sure.
But if you're telling them this is especially for you, they will like, the second one, how do you think that's for me? And so they will be much more critical.
Sure. Yeah, certainly that's a downside. There's also many upsides, I think. People will, so first of all, people will notice that we started doing this. They will see that their news front page is different from their neighbors or from their wives or from their whatever.
Yeah.
So they'll notice. And generally, this is something that at least a vocal part of the public will speak up about. They'll be like, you're creating a filter bubble. I only see stuff that I already know or that reinforces what I know or think or believe or whatever. So knowing that this is going to happen, I think you should be upfront about it. You should just say it. Meaning that you can also say it when you're not doing it. So you can also say like, hey, this is selected for you by journalists. This is, and that actually adds value. We currently don't even say that either, right? It's just a website with news articles. We don't say anything about it. They ended up there. I think it makes sense to start explaining that. And if you start explaining it, you can go a bit further and say, okay, we selected this for you because we think you're interested in that, and that. Or for instance, because we think you're interested in this city. And then you should go even further and say, and give users the opportunity to correct you if you're wrong. And that sort of also takes away the downside that you just mentioned. Because if you actually give users a way to correct you, and you act on that, then next time around, you'll do better. Users feel like they're still in power. And I don't think there's that much of an issue anymore.
Okay, cool. Now let's go to the homepage, because
Sure.
that's a really interesting one. There's a big difference in that sense between news and journalism on the one hand,
Yeah.
and every other recommendation problem in the world on the other hand.
Sure.
Because in news, you are kind of one of the democratic powers, let's say. And there is this responsibility of the newsroom, of the journalists, to inform the public, and so also to decide what they will see or not.
Yeah.
So they rightfully say, well, it's not so trivial to have a machine in there, an AI, at least partially influencing what is shown, let's say, on the front page.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion about that issue?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think we are alone. I think search engines have faced a very similar problem.
Okay.
I think they're a prime example, actually, of this potential danger.
You mean search engines like
such as Google or Bing?
Not the search engine of your favorite fashion website?
No, sorry.
Really?
No, I meant web search engines, the big ones that everyone uses. If they decide, or if their algorithm goes haywire or does something that makes people end up in their very narrow bubble, it would have severe impact as well. Yeah. And people are obviously very afraid of that too. Anyway, apart from that, I do think that indeed our domain is set apart from, for instance, entertainment or something like Netflix. It doesn't really matter with Netflix if you're in a filter bubble or not. Actually, it's great, right? If you don't have to see all that stuff.
Like Mabel.
Exactly, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So I think there is a potential. You could design a system such that it creates filter bubbles, I think. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I'm able to do it. I think it would be pretty tough to do that right, to really understand the user and really make something that is a tight bubble around you. But okay, sure, with enough engineering and enough time, you might be able to get something that's pretty close to that. I don't think you would want to build that, though, because I don't think anyone would be happy with it. Not the journalists, sure, but also not the readers. They don't want to read just what they already know. No, they want to be surprised. They want to learn new stuff. They want to see those things. So it's recommenders aren't that simple. It's personalization. It is not just giving users what they want to see. It's also sparkling something in users, like making them interested or intrigued by something you give them. So my prime example is always this personalization effort, where you would recommend things that you know the user would disagree with, and then say it. Like, hey, here's this article. We think you would disagree with what it says. That would be an awesome recommender. People would probably want to read it. Like, what? You get something I disagree with?
You think
Let me read it, and let me shout about it and be angry about it. Yeah, of course.
That's possible.
Certainly, yeah. People would love it, and that's also personalization, right?
You can already start writing the tweet with, this sucks.
Exactly. Yeah, this sucks, so read it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's an interesting way of putting it. Like, I always had the feeling the filter bubble, yeah, it can happen, but the good thing is you're in a quantitative environment, so you can measure that stuff,
sure,
and you can definitely avoid it. It's not that difficult.
And you would want to.
You take it even one step further. You said, well, even if you wanted to filter bubble, it's probably possible, but it's pretty damn hard to engineer one.
It's hard and also not desirable. I don't think, given the right measurements, you'll find that that's not an optimal system. People will stop reading. You'll become this boring website that only shows what they already know, right?
Then if you say, well, about showing things people like, you're not going to agree with this, showing diversity, let's say.
Exactly.
Isn't there like a risk, or not a risk, a challenge, that you have some KPIs that you want to put forward for the recommendation system, and typically it's engagement based, but by giving a broader view, whether you want it or not, yeah, people like to be confirmed in what they think. So I think it's very interesting to show, hey, you won't like this, and people will appreciate it probably.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that engagement metrics,
Yeah.
like articles read or
Yeah.
click-through rates and stuff like that, that they necessarily go down.
Yeah.
Is that what you think? That's
Now, if you would only show that, they will certainly go down, no doubt. So I don't think you should do either one of them. You should have a mix of many things. I mean, engagement, yeah, that's certainly, I think, a metric that's something, it's certainly something you should measure. We can talk about how to define it, but it's maybe not the real metric.
Okay.
Maybe it's people canceling their subscriptions, something like that. Like a very slow changing metric that takes forever to change if you were running.
And I would say, or I would think, in my experience, is that the short-term proxy for canceling subscriptions would be engagement.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there will be some correlation. Yeah, yeah, no doubt.
So it's sometimes a hard nut to crack to
No, I very much agree. And then an even more short-term metric is click-through rate or something, which is also correlated. But it has its downsides, right? And that's always the case if you take a proxy. Yeah, I mean, Netflix only optimizes for unsubscribes or subscriptions. Therefore, their experiments run at least half a year, which is problematic if you have the speed that, or want to have the speed that most companies want to have. You should be. I think they also. I would think they also measure other things to make sure that if they go haywire, they can. Sure. They don't have to wait half a year. No, certainly not.
To kill an experiment.
No. So certainly there will be a dashboard with many metrics, and certainly there will be lots of abortions of experiments. But if at the end, after 6 months, they have to make a decision on which algorithm is going to be the winning algorithm, they look at subscriptions.
Also interesting what you said, and counterintuitive to me is you said, well, on the front page, the algorithm will maybe only a few times a year change what a journalist would put there. But I would say I can imagine that it is often a tough choice which article to make your headline at a certain moment. So therefore, I would argue, well, you probably have 3 articles you're choosing from, and there is a debate. Should it be the A or should it be B? Then I would say, well, just give them both, let's say, the stamp or the tag of being qualitative enough to be on the front page, to be the headline, and then let the algorithm choose for every individual person which headline material is best for that person.
No, exactly. So I was only sketching the very extreme scenario where the algorithm would decide on its own that this article, that's a very niche article, that's obscure, right? It's about something tiny for most people, but important to you, could still make a headline. Could still make a front page. So I was trying to sketch that very extreme scenario where that could happen. Then there's lots of in-between scenarios where things like you just said could happen. So that's exactly what, for instance, we did at Blendle. So at Blendle, we had journalists or editors reading all the news at night. They read a big portion of the newspapers overnight. So they were awake at night reading the news. And they would pre-select news articles from newspapers that came out. They would typically select about 5 articles per newspaper that were eligible for ending up in our email, in our personalized newsletter, or on the platform. All the other articles you could still see them, but you'd have to search for them. And these are the ones that were pre-selected by journalists, and therefore also the algorithm could promote those to individual users. So that's sort of close to what you were just saying.
You have the mix of journalists, editors curating the bigger selection, and then the algorithm doing the fine selection for individual.
I think that's certainly something you should also do. I don't think these two things exclude each other, though.
Will you say that if I'm really a sports fan, which I am, would it be acceptable that my homepage is full of sports, nothing else?
No.
Why not?
No. So one of the tasks of a newspaper is to inform you, to make sure you are informed. The opposite, I think, is allowed. Like, I'm not a sports fan. I don't care about sports. I mean, I love doing sports, but I don't like reading about it. So for me, you could like keep my homepage or keep any page clean from. I don't have to see any sports. I think that's fine. Again, not for every category. So for showbiz, that's also fine. For foreign news or for politics, that's not fine. Okay. Those are things that people need to be aware of, at least to some extent. And that's one of the responsibilities of media or of news. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, no, sorry, we can't do it.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. So you started actually your team from scratch. You came into the company. Nobody knew where you should be in the company. You tried to find your own way. So you must have done a lot of evangelizing, being advocate of personalization, the importance. Do you believe that personalization can be the difference between winning and losing for a newspaper in the coming years?
Yes, it will be, I think. Yeah. So, so anecdotal, but still. So what I see on my own phone, what's happening, I have an Android phone, is that Google News is starting to push me more and more news. So Google obviously doesn't write the news. They are just channeling it to me. So what's happening is they are more and more controlling what I read and through what I read it. So they're often the first to send me a push notification, and then I start reading it, and okay, all the other apps come later. The more and more they are controlling how news is being read, the less the press group is controlling it. And at some point they can pull a Netflix. They can say, okay, yeah, we actually start producing our own content. You could do that. That's exactly what Netflix has been doing, right? Netflix used to distribute, and now they're actually making films and series and stuff. So, yeah, the same thing. I'm not saying it's happening, but at some point they'll have that power. And that's a very scary position to be in as a news organization. I think if you're completely dependent on an external party to lead the traffic to you, because they can just cancel that. Yeah. And we should not end up in that situation. And therefore, we have to be very, very relevant to users. We're competing, like the press group is competing with Google's and other companies for the attention of users. And we have to win, or at least be part of that competition.
Okay, and can you win it? Because you can do whatever, on your territory, let's say, you can do a lot of things and you can make it great. Yep. But in the end, as you say, it's Google on a Google phone sending you Google notifications, so they have quite some power.
Yeah. So the power we have is a brand. It's a big power. People trust the Volkskrant. People trust the Morgen. For news, when it comes to news, they don't trust Google for that. And we have to use that. We have to say, hey, here is us. Here is the Morgen telling you this. Here is the Volkskrant telling you this. And that's what we have to do, and people will trust that much more than when Google would do the same.
Okay, but can't you have the brand without a personalization?
I don't think so. Because it's about relevance. It's about attention of users, and you have to be the one that gets that attention.
Okay, so it's actually about, you have to live up to the brand. If at a certain point you say, actually we trust the Volkskrant, but Google is now serving me these things I like much better.
It's much more convenient.
Hey, I will switch. So you have the advantage of the brand, but you really have to keep up with it.
Yeah, I think so.
To make sure that that they don't have that feeling. Yeah. Okay, you had to do a lot of evangelization internally to convince people of the importance. That was quite a challenge. What would you say was your biggest challenge up to this point in the whole journey you took?
Yeah. So within the press group, you mean, right? Yes. I'm not really sure. There's a couple of things competing, I guess. It's mostly... Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind to me is organizational structure. That's not fit for what I'm doing.
Okay.
So there's this IT department, and it used to be that the IT department would just take orders from the business. The business would think like, hey, we need a website, and they would ask IT, can you build us a website? And then IT would build a website. And then it might go back and forth a bit, but that's pretty much how it would work together. Well, in this case, I'm in IT, but actually what I'm doing a lot is telling people what's possible. So they don't come to me like, hey, can you do personalization for me? No, I go to them and say, hey, you should be doing personalization. You should do much more of it. So it's IT telling the business what they should be doing. And that's sort of upside down.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems is then you need budget. And in the older ways, it's fine, right? So it's, oh, we need a website, here's money, you make a website. Now it's me saying, hey, you should do personalization. And I say, yeah, I do, I should. And who should pay? And that's an issue. I have all these big plans and all these things that I want to do, and yet I have this smallish team. So, I mean, I'm happy to have a team that can work on these things, don't get me wrong.
How many people are you?
So, depending a little bit on how you count, the biggest number I can tell you is 9.
Okay.
But that's like 6 plus 3 interns.
Okay.
It also includes someone working on a Google D&I funded project that I got funding for. So that's 5, really.
Okay.
And that includes me, right? So it's 4 engineers and me being an engineer / product owner / team lead. Okay. So I've divided my time among those things. So it's really 4 engineers pretty much right now working on these things. That's too little, if you ask me, for all the plans that we have. So I'm constantly asking for more, and it's unclear where the priority and the money and all these things should come from to do those things. And that's the big struggle, because actually a lot of people seem to agree or say they agree, at least to me. And then, yeah, that's what it is. I still have only these people.
Yeah.
I should give it time, I know. I mean, I've only started, I should show results and should see, look here, if you do personalization, your engagement will go up by blah, 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 and that should be convincing to people, and the money should free up, and I should be able to grow. But this is the biggest challenge, like my ambitions versus reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if people ask me question like how to go about this,
yeah.
One part of my answer would always be like build success stories.
Exactly.
Like you have to build small ones first to get internal buy-in and to show the value.
Yeah.
Am I correct that you agree on that?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, that's what I try to say when I say, okay, I'll just have to show what personalized push, for instance, does. One of the problems is that if you start at scratch, you have quite a lead time before you actually get there. Sure, you should build MVPs and things like that, but an MVP of a personalized recommender is not a simple MVP. It just isn't. And I'm sure you are aware.
It needs to do what it's supposed to do.
Exactly, because otherwise people will just say, yeah, cool, you sent me a push notification, but it sucks. So, yeah, it's an MVP, yeah. So no, really, you need to, before you are able to really do that, you need to have a good understanding, in our case, of content and user, and that just takes time, and that's tough. So really, I think it's a mix of a couple of things that needs to happen. So it's buy-in because of people believing in the story, and then later on because of results that come out.
Yeah, the MVP story I really like, because you can send a push notification, but then if it's in there is bogus, then
sure. No, I mean, we could have sent a push notification on the first day. We obviously didn't. I mean, we could have done hand-picked personalized pushes or something like that. Anyway, but whatever.
Don't bring people ideas.
No.
Okay, so. You have this way. You have success stories. You have that challenge. I lost it again. You can't tell me that that you can cut because I'm not giving it all my effort then. All right, so that's an organizational challenge.
Yeah.
I think I agree that they're probably the biggest one and the most difficult ones to tackle.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the reason for that is that actually let's say the economy, to use a big word, is transforming in a sense that almost every consumer-facing company is getting in the direction of being a tech company? Or if you put it the other way around, you can say, well, there are no tech companies anymore, because you could say Netflix, is it a tech company or is it a TV company? Well, probably both. But does it have to do with the fact that actually the company needs to put the technology at the center of its operations?
Yeah. Yes, very much. Yes, I fully agree. I mean, the fact that I talk about us having an IT organization pretty much points at that, right? You should not have an IT department. Maybe a small one to do the Wi-Fi and the printers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. The rest should not exist as such. Obviously, the people that build websites, they should still be there, but they should sit next to the business people and the marketing people. You shouldn't have these columns in your organization and one part of the organization giving an order to the other part of the organization. It should be much more intertwined and collaborative.
Because you worked at Google. Google, did you see stuff like that over there?
Google obviously does not have an IT department. Yeah. No, I mean, that would be a joke, right? No, Google does not work that way. It's the opposite, right? It's led by IT, led by developers.
Okay.
Very much so. Yeah.
From a technological point of view, did you have serious roadblocks there that you need to overcome, or was it
plenty.
Straight ahead?
Plenty. So for one, we have just limitations that come from, for instance, budget limitations. We can't just spend whatever we want to compute. So we have to be resourced, like to take that into account and develop our infrastructure such that it scales, but stays within bounds when it comes to costs, and that's not trivial. So if you realize that whenever an article is published in our in the system that our journalists use, our digital newsroom, so an article comes out, we receive it, and then we consider every possible user for that article. So we have millions of users, obviously, and we consider every one of them whether they might be interested in this article and might want to receive it as a push notification. Well, scaling that is not trivial. Certainly not if you want to stay within reasonable limits.
Yeah, you don't want to send it tomorrow.
Right, exactly. You have to be fast enough still, right?
Yeah,
so our system is completely horizontally scalable. But if we would just, like a few months ago, if we would just let it scale indefinitely, it would be really fast. You would get it right away. It would also be very expensive. Yeah. You would spend like euros on each push notification.
A golden push notification.
Yes, it would be also really fast and very expensive. And obviously, you can't, right? Yeah. So actually, a lot of challenge. Not all the technical challenges like that, but a fair amount that do. So we have to be careful and find optimizations everywhere.
For me, you're really touching upon one of the two technical challenges of news personalization. So the first one being the journalistic responsibility and making sure that's taken care of, and you do that in a good way. The second one being the speed of news. Yeah. You don't have that much time to give a good recommendation, because if the system, let's say the AI, thinks too long about it, it's already old news.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes.
So
yeah, you
did specific things to solve that?
Well, we're trying. So one of the things we did is we have a system that, as I say, is horizontally scalable, but also auto-scalable, meaning that if journalists end up writing a lot at the same time, we do scale up our system quite a bit, and it grows a lot. It goes 20 times or 30 times, something like that. Which is great because it means that we can actually still be fast. So we do take that into account. I wanted to say something else. What was your other part of the question?
So whether the speed, whether you could handle that easily, or whether you had to put a specific effort in there to.
Yeah. So this is part of our effort. And another part, right? This is what I wanted to say. Another part is there's lots of sort of tricks that you can do. For instance, you know a lot about your users, so you don't have to consider them in a random order. You can consider them in the most likely order that they will want to receive that push notification and open it at that moment.
Okay.
So we keep track of those things. Like we keep track of how long it takes for a user to open a push notification when we send it, and how long or at what time users read news,
okay.
Or what fraction they even ever look at, like what fraction do they open, and things like that. And when we consider our users for a push for an article, we sort them in such a way that the users that are most likely to want to receive that push notification will get it first.
Okay.
Yeah.
You touched upon the scalability and that speed is important,
Yeah.
which is for me a good opening to the question of algorithms versus engineering.
Yeah.
So I have a scientific background, and as a scientist, I thought, well, it's all about having fancy algorithms,
Yeah.
the best ones, improving there, and then of course, you need to implement them and they need to run, of course, in production, duh. But that's about it. Now I kind of drastically adjusted my view on that.
Yeah.
I now see very much that the engineering part of it, the reliability, the robustness, the monitoring, the speed is super crucial to achieve quality. What's your experience in that area?
Yeah, I fully agree. I come from a similar background, I think. I used to work on algorithms. And nowadays, I wouldn't say I do. I mostly am an engineer. My team is mostly engineers. Yes, our applications are machine learning applications, so we do spend time talking about that, but the bulk of our work is engineering, making sure that that simple algorithm that we choose, and frankly, we are building pretty simple algorithms and not that complicated from a machine learning perspective. I mean, there's a few components that aren't trivial, but the bulk of what we're building isn't that hard conceptually. So it's really engineering, just to making sure that works, making sure that we know it when it doesn't, making sure that we get a phone call if we don't respond fast enough, things like that, just operational stuff. I actually enjoy that a lot. It also means that you have this operational system with all dashboards and everything. So we have meters saying how many push notifications we're currently sending per second, things like that. And I love seeing those things.
Yeah, because you now have the situation where your team is responsible for some end result, let's say 24/7, or maybe not, because at least for now the push notifications, they will not be sent at 3 o'clock in the night. Maybe.
We shut it down at night. Okay. It would do it, but we have a couple of business rules just before we send the push notification. One of them is don't send anything between, I think, 10 in the morning and 10 in the evening and 6 in the morning. I think that's one of our business rules.
Okay. Yeah. So that's also something that helps you to sleep at night.
Yes.
Systems down.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But my experience is, if you look at the code of having, let's say, a production ready machine learning thing, it can be a recommender system, of course, but anything. Sure. Yeah. Like 5% of the code is maybe the algorithm, the real machine learning.
Yep.
But then 95% is everything around it, making sure it really works.
Yeah. I think you're overestimating the 5%.
Overestimating the 5%. Okay.
Yeah. No, Frank. Yeah, really. It's really not that much. It's a small portion of what we do. I still think it's important that the people that work on these things know about machine learning and understand these things, Because you have to understand metrics, you have to understand what the effects are of your algorithm or on your algorithm, and how the interplay between your architecture and the algorithm is. So, but yeah, the reality is that we're mostly engineers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have a scientific background, but I've seen that you're still quite active scientifically.
Yeah.
You co-organize workshops and conferences, etc. Is that important to you, or is it a hobby, or you think it's essential?
I guess I don't know, it's many things. It's the default to me. It's just what I'm used to. Also, it's why it's relatively easy for me to recruit. It's not why I do it. It happens to be the case. But I did find that it was pretty easy to find people in my team, partially because I'm, part of a community. It's also a way to stay in touch, keep up to date with whatever is happening in the scientific community. And it's fun. I'm supervising students. We have three interns. They're writing their master thesis with us. I like having them around in my team. I think it brings a good atmosphere. Is that a word to the team? Yeah.
Atmosphere.
They don't work on our core product. They come and work on their own product, which is usually something that's slightly different from what we typically do, but it's close enough for us to be able to interact with them on it. And it makes sure that we keep thinking just around our product, not just on what we do. So it gives new ideas, and sometimes a bit of what they do drips into whatever we do, if we're lucky. It's not the goal. The goal is mostly to see whether we want to hire these interns, and whether they want to work with us, obviously. It's a great period, right? They stay around for 6 months or so, so it's a real good way for both parties, I think, to get to know each other. And actually, so one of our interns who graduated like 2 weeks ago or something, he will start in 2 weeks in our team as a machine learning engineer.
Okay.
So it works.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do I understand correctly that you built this whole thing from the ground up?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why? Many reasons, I think. Just like you don't want to outsource your journalism, you don't want to outsource these things that should be core of the company. I really think that it's vital for a company like the Press Group, for a news organization, to understand the algorithms or the workings or mechanisms that put news in front of people. Mm-hmm. You should be able to always explain how this article ended up in front of a user, even if it means going through a machine learning algorithm and saying, yeah, it was this feature and that feature that fired. You should be able to look at it and understand it and debug it if it went wrong. So that's part of the answer. I also think if you want to do this for the long term, and I think we should, it's economically a good idea. I also think it's important for the company to be able to talk to me every day, to see me walk around. I shouldn't be an external company doing this for them. I should be there, be a colleague, and have interactions, lots of interactions with the whole company. I spend a fair amount of my time, talking to the editors-in-chiefs of all the newspapers that we have, for instance, to see what they think about personalization, to just have a conversation on what I think, where I think it should be going. So that's part of what I do, and then I actually also implement it, and that makes lots of sense. So they know where to go when things go wrong, and I know where to go when we did this new thing, or when I have a question on how we should implement something.
Okay. Ideally, how large should your team be, you think? If in a perfect world, of course not in a perfect, but still kind of realistic way, let's say.
No, I think there would be space for a team that's, 3 times as big as what I have currently. Yeah.
So it's about 20 people, something like that.
Yeah, okay. I counted the core of my team, so but in that order.
In that order.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe we should go into the technology that you're using, the
Sure.
kinds of algorithms. So let's talk about push notifications. What kind of techniques are you using? Of course, you maybe don't want to go into the real details.
No, I'm happy to tell you everything.
Okay, go ahead.
Partially because it's actually quite simple, and I don't think I frankly don't think that there's any. You shouldn't be secretive about these things, mostly because it's the engineering that matters, and these algorithms are just this tiny bit. So good luck implementing the same thing. So what we do is content-based recommendation. That's in short what we do. An article comes in, we pull it through an NLP pipeline, we extract all this metadata, if you want to call it, all this information about this article, such as name identity recognition, so organizations, persons, locations mentioned in the article. We extract sentiment, we extract stylometrics, we call them, so it's things like vocabulary richness, like how difficult is this article? Like,
yes.
Does it use long, complex words or not? Is it a long read? Is it a short read? Is it like just a short blurb, or should you spend a long time reading the article? The language, I'm forgetting things, but these sort of attributes of articles. So that's one component, understanding our content. And then we build user profiles, understanding our users. And that comes down to looking at the articles the users read, and then getting all that metadata from the article and adding it to a user. So we pretty much just have a bunch of metadata for each user. So for instance, for each user we know which named entities they read about. So do they read about Donald Trump? Do they read about the company Google? Do they read about Antwerpen? Those sort of things we attach to a user. So we have a rich user profile, a rich representation of the user, and a rich representation of the article. And then what happens if a new article gets published, we enrich it. We select those users that might be interested in the article, so we have user item pairs. And all this flows through a streaming pipeline. So, if you want to talk about really the details of that, it's a Kafka setup. So we have Kafka topics, and the data flows through that. So we have pairs of users and articles that flow through it. So you have to realize that for each article that comes through, we pull in all the users that might potentially be interested, so that one article, one Kafka message explodes to millions of Kafka messages.
Okay.
And then we have this topic with user item pairs, user article pairs, and then we have something that extracts features. So, it looks at, does very simple things, but if I want to put it in words, it's things like, does the author of the article match one of the, so is this user interested in the author? That's pretty much what it comes down to. Okay. Or did the user read about a named entity mentioned in the article before, or how often, or what fraction? Or does the document embedding of the article match that of the user? We have an aggregated embedding of the user, and what's the cause and similarity between those two things? So we extract features like that, many, and embed that to a new Kafka topic. And then we have classifiers that take those features and produce a classification. And in this case, a classification is supposed to say, should we push it or not? So we try to just directly classify that. That's why we experiment. So you can have different classifiers, obviously, trained on historical data that make different predictions. And they can run next to each other. So we can have many classifiers running in parallel, and then later on we have some component that decides for which user, which of the classifiers we should actually use based on an experiment they are in. And then we have some business logic all the way at the end that says, okay, great, cool that you think we should push it. We won't because it's midnight. or we won't because we just did so. We just pushed something to this user. We shouldn't be spamming them. Or we just push something that's very, very similar. So let's not, and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty much what we do. And the machine learning is in the classifier bit. And so we can train classifiers offline and deploy them there. And we're planning on an online learning setup where we would be doing something like bandits.
Okay. You say the machine learning part is in the classifier, but if you say you have document embeddings and user embeddings, how do you get them? Because
we use pre-trained vectors.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So actually, you have pre-trained vectors related, to language.
Yes.
And you simply add them together, or
I'm not sure what we do currently, frankly.
Okay. Some aggregation, which might be a sum or something.
No, it's something slightly different. I'll have to ask Lucas for the details.
Okay.
I don't remember. So indeed, for the user, you'll have to aggregate them, and summing them, we know, is not necessarily a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, what I notice, because it's something we at Froomle do a lot, it's you didn't mention anything collaborative filtering related.
No.
Is it because you just didn't add that to the mix yet, or you believe it's not good for news? Or?
Both. So I'm not saying it's not good for news, but it's certainly not good enough to just be that for news. I think you need something that's content-based, mostly because we want to send this push notification before anyone read the article. So plain collaborative filtering on article level wouldn't work.
That wouldn't work.
No. Obviously, you can do different things that are still collaborative filtering on a slightly higher level. For instance, you can abstract a little bit to, I don't know, maybe the enrichments, the NLP enrichments that I just mentioned. You could do collaborative filtering based on those things.
Or you could wait half an hour until people actually...
No, it's news.
Sorry?
It's news. And actually people start reading it because we push it, right?
Okay.
So if you wait, nothing happens. If you push, something will happen, but then it's like...
Okay, so it's really, without a notification, it will be really hard to get traffic on the...
Well, on some of the content, yes, and certainly on the content we're currently interested in, the niche content. That stuff that's 4 clicks down.
Okay.
Right? It will take a while before people really start interacting with that in a meaningful way. So that signal is very slow. We don't want to wait, and we think we can do fine by just looking at content.
All right, cool. So maybe to close the whole thing down, you've quite some experience. You did recommendation in different companies, different types of companies. If people want to improve in this area or they want to start with it, would there be some advice that you could give them?
Wow. I mean, the easiest way to get started is to just join a team, I guess, of people that are already doing this. I mean, that's partially what I did when I joined Blendle, right? So I wasn't alone there. We had a team of people that we built these systems with. So I learned a lot there. Other than that, I mean, there are indeed, depending a bit on your domain, there are things that you can do that are simpler than what we do. So collaborative filtering in some ways is simpler. You don't actually have to look at the content of neither user or item. You just look at metadata of that, of the interactions, which is simpler in a way. It also has its complications. Mm-hmm. But if you can, so if you are in a domain where you can do that, I would do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do.
All right.
And then, obviously there's companies that provide services, and I don't think there's anything wrong with using that. I think you might want to do it to prove a point. Actually, we did at the press group. We used external parties to provide us with recommendations. I think if you mature with the company, you should do it yourself. Certainly if you're a news organization, but I don't think there's anything wrong with trying out external parties. I think you should at first.
All right. Then maybe if you want to learn, if you want to keep up to date, what are the channels you use? Do you follow people on social media? Do you read blogs, books?
Yeah.
Is there something you can share there?
I don't think I read books. Well, I read books, but not on these topics.
Yeah.
No, I mostly I'm active on Twitter, which is a great source, and it leads me into blog posts, into academic papers. I will be at Rexis, so the Recommender Systems conference in Copenhagen in a month or so from now.
Yes.
I'm active in the information retrieval community, which is different, but not that different. Certainly not if you're doing content-based recommendation. It's actually pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
So I organize a conference, the Dutch Belgium, but the B is silent, which is weird. The Dutch Belgium Information Retrieval Conference, but it's dead anyway.
No.
So I'm one of the organizers of that, and it allows me to have lots of interactions with people that are in similar domains. I find that just engaging with lots of people is a good way of staying up to date, doing these sort of things.
Are there like news companies you know of that you could say, wow, I'll really like to keep an eye on them because I think they're really acing it or are ahead of the pack? Or don't you have kind of these examples in the news world?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple in the US. New York Times is doing stuff. Washington Post is doing stuff, and I'm certainly forgetting companies there. The Neue Zürcher Zeitung in Switzerland is doing things. I'm in contact with a couple of people at these organizations. I talk a lot to people I know at Financiële Dagblad in the Netherlands, and RTL, which is different but similar enough. I do keep an eye on people doing similar things and trying to learn. Usually I just tell them what I do and I'll get lots of feedback or questions. That's a great way of learning too.
Okay, that works. That works pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, Anne, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
For this talk. I really loved it. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked it. If you want more content of this and learn more, please subscribe through the link below in the description of this video. Thanks.